The next point, we should ensure whatever we see is clear.
That means work is being done, we can see that it is in opposite direction.
Hello students, you are welcome to another segment of the e-learning program sponsored by the Kaduna State Ministry of Education. I am Rekia Lol Othman. I'm here to teach you history. And our topic of discussion today is the activities of the Christian missionaries in West Africa. The activities of the Christian missionaries were aimed in spreading the Christian religion and stopping the slave trade amongst the West Africans. When you look at it, their activities is based on two major things. One, to stop the slave trade, and secondly, to spread the Christian religion. If my students could remember, in one of our lessons, we discussed slave trade, where I made mention of one of the reasons of stopping the slave trade was the activities of the Christian missionaries. And here we are today. The Christian missionaries in the first half of the 18th century, when the various Christian Missionary Society and Wesleyan Missionary Society sent missionary workers to European forts on the coast in 1806 to 1841. Missionaries were sent to colonies of Liberia and Sierra Leone. That is, the missionaries met together, made trained missionaries to go to West Africa in order to stop the slave trade, one, and secondly, to spread the Christian religion. From here, trained European and African missionaries were sent to other parts of West Africa. That is, from the Sierra Leone, they were sent to other parts of West Africa. We have missionaries like Bishop Ajayi Crowther, who was sent to Abeokuta and Niger territories in the year 1844 to 1870s. And we have Reverend T.B. Freeman, who worked at Cape Coast and later sent to Abeokuta in 1839 to 1846. These were the two missionaries that started their activities in West Africa in order to spread the Christian religion and also to stop the barbaric slave trade activities. Even though they were faced with so many problems, so many challenges in order to foster this religion into the Africans, they were faced with these difficulties. One, missionaries sometimes paid attention to commerce than evangelism. Two, limited number of missionary workers. Three, traditional religion of the West Africans. Four, West African climate and environment. And five, language problem. These were the five difficulties or five problems that were faced by the missionaries as they come into the West African territories. And we are going to discuss each of these five problems one after another. Missionaries sometimes paid more attention to commerce than evangelism. This is the first problem faced by these missionaries. Some of the time, because of their limited resources, they spent much of their time in commerce, which prevented them from carrying out their evangelical work effectively. They began to engage in trade, in commercial activities, instead of concentrating in converting the Africans to Christianity, preaching to them. They diverted their attention or they diverted their activities into commercial activities. For example, missionaries in the Niger territory, that is those under Bishop Ajayi Crowther, who I earlier said was sent to Niger territories, they traded in cotton with the merchants of the Royal Niger Company. The Royal Niger Company is situated at the Niger territories. So therefore, the missionaries diverted their attention due to these limited resources they earn. They diverted their attention in trading activities, in commercial activities, thereby undermining the real activity they come for. That is the preaching or the conversion to Christianity. Secondly, we have limited number of missionary workers. The small number of missionaries made the problem of converting the Africans to Christianity very difficult. Africa is a very large territory. Then the missionaries that had been sent to Africa were very few in number. Thereby, they could not cover every hook and corner of the African territories. The few numbers that were around could not go everywhere. Thereby, it made it very difficult for the missionaries to convert Africans into the religion. Thirdly, we have the traditional religion of the West Africans. The West Africans hold very tight to their traditional religion. They obey and they hold tight to this religion. It was very difficult for the missionaries to penetrate, that is to stop them or to discourage them from this their traditional religion. The traditional religion and custom of West Africans prevented Christianity from making an immediate and effective impact on the people. Thereby, because they hold so strong to this their religion, that is their traditional religion, the missionaries found it very difficult to discourage them, to make them forget about their customs or their religion. Another problem faced by the missionaries was the West African climate and environment. The enervating heat of West Africa and the mosquito-infected areas in which many of the missionaries worked resulted in a great number of European missionaries dying of tropical diseases. That is the climatical challenge they got. The missionaries were not used to the African weather. It was too harsh on them, thereby causing so much discomfort for them, getting diseases. The mosquito area was not even conducive for the Europeans. Thereby, at the end of the day, most of the missionaries were dying as a result of these diseases. Then we have the language problem. As West Africans did not understand the European languages and few missionaries spoke African languages, the missionaries found it difficult to perform their duties effectively. There was communication gap. That is, the Africans do not understand the European language, and the European could not communicate to the Africans because they do not understand the missionaries' languages. This made it very difficult for them to explain or to express themselves in converting them into this religion. Thereby, it was a problem faced by the missionaries. Nevertheless, as we have explained in the past, the missionaries faced so many problems, but again, they left so many positive impacts on the West Africans. These effects of missionary activities on West Africa were spread of Christianity. 2, some undesirable African traditions were stopped. 3, education. 4, growth of articulated elites. 5, writing of African languages. 6, introduction of new farming method and commercial practices. 7, welfare institutions were established. 8, introduction of new techniques and skills. These were the effects of the Christian missionaries on West Africa. These were the positive effects of the Christian missionaries. Let's take one after another. Spread of Christianity. Conversion to Christianity made people to believe in one true God and engendered love for individuals. These beliefs freed people from ignorance and superstition, and it brought peace. One of the effects of Christian missionary activities on West Africa is the spread of Christianity. It made the Africans to believe in one true God. It made them to leave their superstitious activities. It made to believe and their ignorant activities. It made them to live in peace with one another. It made them to love one another. This is one of the greatest or one of the well-achieved effects of the missionaries on Africans. It made them to stop the intertribal wars, to stop the slave trade, and have fear of God. Secondly, some undesirable African traditions were stopped. Undesirable practices such as the killings of twins in Old Calabar were stopped. This is a custom of the Africans before the coming of the Christian missionaries in Africa. The Old Calabar people they believe that having twins is an abomination. So any woman that gives birth to twins, they take these twins and kill. But with the coming of Christianity, they were able to abolish this undesirable custom. Thirdly, we have education, which is another important effect, or one of the most important effects of the missionary activities in Africa. The missionaries set up primary schools and higher institutions of learning, such as Forebe College in Sierra Leone. It resulted in an educated class who became doctors, lawyers, and civil servants. They filled administrative and professional jobs in commercial and government establishments in West Africa. That is education for us. The missionaries were able to establish schools, both primary and higher institutions, which led to the emergence of professionals, the doctors, the lawyers, and other administrative workers who worked along with the missionaries and the Europeans who come to exploit Africa. There was also the educated elites who became articulate nationalists. That is the product of these schools. They became well-educated and also articulated nationalists. Leaders such as Dr. Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, we have Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, and Chief Obafemi Awolowo of Nigeria, were the products of the educational institutions established by the missionary activities, and they fought for the political independence of their respective countries. Another effect was the writing of African languages. By 1880, there were many grammar and vocabulary books, such as the Crowther's Grammar and Vocabulary of the Yoruba language, which was written in 1843. The African languages were now written on books with the coming of these missionaries. Because of the institutions they established, the African languages were now put into writing. And importantly, the Bible was also translated into many local languages for the Africans to understand the religion properly. They were able to translate the Bible into many languages, Yoruba language, Igbo language, etc. Another effect, the missionaries introduced new farming methods and commercial practices. This is in order to stop the slave trade. As I said, the missionaries played an important role in discouraging and stopping the slave trade. So in order to do so, they were able to introduce new farming methods and commercial practices, and to improve the standard of living of the Africans. The missionaries encouraged legitimate trade. If my students could remember, slave trade was replaced with legitimate trade. They introduced plantations, production of plantation crops such as coffee, cocoa, cotton, groundnuts on model farms in Nigeria. Gold Coast and Sierra Leone, they all introduced this new farming method and commercial techniques. And by establishing trading businesses such as West African Company in Nigeria, which was founded in 1863. West African Company was a very large company which we discussed in one of our lessons. It was established in 1863 in order to divert the attention of the Africans from the slave trade to come back to legitimate trade, which was meant for buying and selling of African and imported goods. Another effect was the welfare institutions were established to reduce or eradicate diseases such as smallpox, leprosy, malaria, and dysentery, and to improve health standards. Hospitals, dispensaries, and antenatal and maternal clinics were built. As we have said, weather problem was one of the difficulties faced by the missionaries. In order to block this problem, they were able to establish institutions like the hospitals, the dispensaries, the maternity and antenatal hospitals, clinics. They were able to build them in order to curtail the problem of diseases. Example of such was the Sacred Heart Hospital, which is established in Abeokuta. There was also the introduction of new techniques and skills. Another effect of the Christian missionary activities was the introduction of new techniques and skills. The missionaries introduced skills including carpentry, bricklaying, and printing throughout West Africa, especially in Freetown, Liberia, and Nigeria. These carpentry, bricklaying, and printing, they introduced it, taught Africans in order to create jobs for the Africans so that they will stop the slave trade and begin to do some other works that would divert their attention from the slave trading to these activities that will move the Africans forward. Now, my students, I hope you are following all what we have discussed, but in order for us to get the main points, let's summarize the whole topic again. The Christian activities or missionary activities in West Africa, as I have said, was aimed mainly at two things. One, to stop the slave trade, and two, in order to introduce or to convert the Africans into the Christian religion. Secondly, we have discussed that the missionaries, as they came into Africa, they were faced with so many problems, so many difficulties. And we discussed 5 of these difficulties. One, we said the missionaries paid more attention to commercial activities than the evangelism work they came for. Secondly, there was limited number of missionaries over the Africans. The missionaries were very few, and Africans have large population. which made them very difficult to penetrate into the Africans. Then we have the traditional religion of the West Africans. That is their real religion, the traditional religion they had. They held it very tight. They were not ready to leave it easily. So the missionaries found it very difficult to penetrate, to discourage them from this traditional religion. Fourthly, we have the climate and the environment of Africa itself. That is, it was not conducive for the missionaries, which it was so harsh for them, which led to them getting so many diseases and most of them dying. And finally, we have the language problem. That is, there was the communication gap. The missionaries do not understand the African language, while the Africans do not understand the missionaries' languages. So this made it very difficult for them to express themselves properly. Then, nevertheless, with the problems, there were so many effects of these missionary activities on West Africa. One, I said, spread of Christianity. They were able to achieve this. Secondly, some undesirable African traditions were stopped. Thirdly, there was education. They built primary and post-primary schools, which led to the growth of articulated elites. There was also the writing of African languages. Introduction of new farming method and commercial practices was another effect of the Christian missionary activities in Africa. There was also the welfare institutions that were established, said the hospitals, antenatal clinics, maternal clinics, dispensary, etc. were all established as a result of the missionary activities. And finally, I said there was the introduction of new techniques and skills which led to creation of jobs within the Africans. Assignment number 1. What were the effects of the Christian missionaries on West Africa in the 19th century? 2. Outline 4 of the challenges faced by the Christian missionary workers in West Africa. You can give feedback of your assignment through my number 080-3788-2650. I remain Rekia Lawal Othman. Stay home, stay safe, keep learning. Thank you.